You're listening to the 108 Days of Chanting podcast, a show where we aim to understand who we really are so we can more effectively move towards what we want. My name is Chaitanya Das, and I'm a husband, a father, and an inspiring devotee, best known for not being known at all. I'm sitting down with interesting people to talk about their story, the lessons they've learned, and what it really means to be happy. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the 108 Days of Chanting podcast. I'm your host, Chaitanya Das, and today I have the pleasure to talk to Damodar Prasad. How's it going, Damodar?
Hello. I'm doing great. How are you?
Here we are again. We have a little technical issue. I like to be transparent. We have some technical issues, but Damodar, thank you very much for joining me here on the podcast.
You're welcome.
As I just mentioned to you, I started this podcast just to have conversations with people in all different subjects, right? But as an underline, a Krishna consciousness conversation, seeing ourselves wherever we are, as we really are, wherever we are, if that makes sense, right? That we are not this body, we're spirit souls, but we are in this body. So I think one thing that I like to say is like we cannot get there from there. Whatever there is. We can only get there from where we are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you got to start with where you're at and move forward.
Exactly. So as someone that is in the coaching business, right? With the knowledge you have received, you are endeavoring to assist others. CoachDamodar.com. That's a plug right here. Go and check it out. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm gonna put a link in the description. I love it. I'm gonna put yes, I'm gonna put a link in the description of this YouTube video. If you are listening on Spotify or any other podcast platform, go and check it out. CoachDamodar.com. So Damodar, I'm gonna get straight to it. I have a few questions for you. So let's start with you introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to right now.
Sure. I was born in Washington State, and I always had kind of a spiritual sense. Like I remember as a child, I used to sit under a tree and kind of meditate, and I was a little different. People would notice, be like, "Are you okay? Are you sad or something?" I'd be like, "No, I'm just like meditating." Like, what's that? And that was an aspect of my personality all the way through high school, where I was attracted to Buddhism or meditation, different things like that, spirituality. And I never really felt like school or career or college or any of those things were really important to me. Like I felt like I needed to follow my calling. So I actually became a monk after high school. I spent my 20s in temples, studying the scriptures of ancient India, practicing mantra meditation, doing things like distributing food to homeless or on college campuses, and started to feel like I needed to find my place in the world. So moved out on my own, and I got a job taking care of people with Alzheimer's and dementia. I still do that part-time, and I'm also working as a life coach for the last 5 years.
Nice. Where did you move into the temple? What state? Was here in the United States or you lived in India?
California.
California.
Yeah.
One of the ISKCON temples?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Full on brahmachari for how long?
7 years, I think.
7 years.
Yeah.
Wow, that is an experience. I didn't have the opportunity to serve in that manner or to experience that. I met the devotees, so I did just traveled around a little bit, meeting the different deities, the different temples, and then eventually got into grihasta life, married life.
Yeah. So you were traveling with a group of devotees?
No, not really. Like just with gurukulis here, like just going to different the temples around here. I went to New York, like Nutalavan. What else?
How'd you first meet the devotees?
I met the devotees in Orlando. Do you know Govinda Romero?
Yeah, I think
Govinda
so.
Romero has a car dealership. Yeah. Say it again?
The cook?
No. Govinda, he's a young gurukuli. He has a car dealership or a few car dealerships here in Gainesville, in Alachua. His name is Govinda Romero, and I met him in Orlando in 2005, beginning of 2005. Actually, no, I met him in 2004 because I came to the States in 2003.
I'm looking him up right now to figure it out.
Yeah, Govinda Romero. He's, I think his last name is Sandreski. I don't know how he is on Facebook. To be honest with you.
I haven't met him before.
Yeah, but he helped me out there because I was going to school and I needed some part-time job, and he hired me. I was working literally like washing dishes, a dishwasher in restaurants and things like that. And then after a while, and my English wasn't good. I didn't really know how to speak English, but after a while we got
really?
a little. No, I didn't. I came to study. I was studying at UCF, the University.
I didn't know English was your second language.
Yeah. It has been years now, though. It's been like what, 17 years? But yeah, I didn't know how to speak English.
I can't even tell.
Thank you. I worked very hard. I worked very hard at it, to be honest.
Good job.
Very hard. I had to equal like the playing field, and the only way to compete in the marketplace was to learn how to speak English. So I met him. That eventually I was working with him in the office in Orlando, just kind of placing labor, right, helping him, and then through him I met the devotees. He gave me a Bhagavad Gita, as it is in Portuguese, which is interesting. He was, he was dating a Brazilian lady at the time, and he had a Bhagavad Gita as it is in Portuguese. So I started reading. I asked him, "What is your Bible, right? What do you guys read?" Because that was my background. I grew up like Christian, practicing Christian, going to church and everything, and read the Bhagavad Gita, and I thought it was fascinating. And then I was kind of done with my deal there in Orlando. I wasn't happy the way things were. I was like, I'm going to go back to Brazil. I have my life there. I accomplished what I needed to accomplish here. And he invited me to come to Alatra because he was opening a freight brokerage company. Several devotees, whoever, devotee friends of ours who might be listening to this, he'll be familiar to what I'm saying. There's a company that a few devotees here in the community worked at. And that's what brought me here. Then once I came here, even that business lasted a couple of years, and then just I fell in love with the community. I fell in love with the philosophy. But yeah, it was very interesting. But it's not about me. It is about you. Let's talk about you. So yes, sure. So monk, live in the temple for 7 years. I figured that was an overall positive experience for you, kind of like for someone who's very inquisitive. Huh?
I was more of a punk.
You were more of a punk? What do you mean by that?
I'm just rhyming words and joking. I was more of a punk than a monk.
I see. But it was good. It was good, huh? So it was kind of an overall good experience for you in the temple, those 7 years?
Probably went on too long.
Could
But
have.
I'm like still unpacking it all. It's just like applying everything I learned to my life now. And
all right.
So in that perspective, I think it was really good.
Well, so let me ask you this then. So maybe that will answer the question. Like, what is, although you answered, but is related to the question I asked. What brought you to Krishna consciousness and kept you here, right? Because you're a practicing devotee. You identify yourself as a Krishna Bhakta, right? A Hare Krishna devotee.
Yeah, I do. Well, I think what brought me was the sound of Sanskrit.
You just liked the language.
Yeah. Before I even knew that like chanting the verses of Sanskrit was a thing, I started doing it. Like I had the books, and I was like working at a grocery store, and as I was like bringing the carts back, I'd like pull out the Bhagavad Gita and start like saying the words. And it's like I got a like instant download of like all these verses. And
it comes easy to you, huh?
Yeah. People like ask me like, how did you learn all this? And I honestly don't know. It was just like felt familiar.
That's incredible. It does not sound familiar to me. It does not come easy to me. I love the philosophy. I feel like I relate and understand the lessons, right? As far as, I mean, I'm not saying I understand the lessons. I'm not saying I'm a scholar or anything like that. But I relate with the message. I relate with the philosophy. Period. But I'm not really good with the Sanskrit, with the verses and memorizing the verses. Although I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. the wonderful thing is there's so many facets that you can get into with devotional service and bhakti, and we all have a unique nature that we can apply.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And so, what brought you? How did that came about? How did you know decided to go into the temple? Someone influenced you, or you kind of went searching and kind of walked into the temple in California? How did that happen?
Well, the first time I went to the temple was the morning after I was born.
Hmm.
My parents brought me to Mangalarti. Um, they got divorced when I was 1, and growing up with my mom, it was kind of like Christian who goes to Easter and Christmas Mass kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew about the temple, and we go, and I thought it was a cool thing to do, but I didn't understand anything. It wasn't a big part of our lives.
So, just so I understand, you grew up. So you are a gurukuli, officially. What in the community they call a gurukuli. Your parents were practicing devotees, and they were going to Mangalartik. So you were born a gurukuli, and they named you Damodar.
That's right.
I got you. Okay, that's cool. So then you went through your life still in the temple. So you grew up around the philosophy.
Not around the philosophy for sure. I grew up with a very, very occasional exposure to the temple, to kirtan, prasadam, deities.
I see. And then when you got a little older, you made the decision to.
Yeah, yeah. After high school, my dad gave me a Bhagavad Gita. I just started reading it, and at first I was like comparing it with other versions because I wanted to know like what's most authentic.
Uh huh.
So I had like a bunch of Bhagavad Gitas out on the table, and I'm like comparing them. It's like Srila Prabhupada is translating karma yoga as devotional service, and I'm like trying to wrap my head around that.
Mm.
But um, I didn't understand everything, but I definitely got kind of absorbed in it, and I started feeling like where I was wasn't where I belonged because I had like so much interest and passion in this book, and my friends were just like not into it. So I wanted to go somewhere where I could like share this with other people who are into it also. And I was telling my dad about that, and he's like, "Well, you can live in the temple, right?" I was like, "What? What do you mean?" It's like you can live in the temple and you can just like read all day. That was like exactly like my dream. Like I didn't even know was possible. So yeah, I quit my job, and I like before I left, I was like, okay, I'm probably never gonna drink again. So here's the last one. Ooh, 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 ooh. It was like a ceremony.
That's
It was
funny.
like a ceremony, and I was like, okay, there goes my material life. Goodbye.
And that's it. You moved in.
Yeah, that was it.
That is interesting, though. So it's so amazing to me how people come, even gurukulis, those that are born like that made the decision. Because there are people that were born, but they kind of they stick around, right? They might come on Sunday to get some prasadam, and they come pay obeisances and leave. There are those that are born and stick around and participate in kirtan. There are those that are born and stick around and participate in kirtan and get into the philosophy and discussions. There are kind of all kinds of. There's a spectrum there, right? There's those that like myself, they are quote unquote converts, right? If you want to put it like that, kind of came to
Yeah.
Krishna consciousness already. Being adults, young adults, or whatever you want to call. So it's always interest to me. Um, so okay, you again, you're a gurukuli. You got at a young age. You want to just more association, right? Better association, so you could talk to people about the things that you were reading and kind of having discussions that
Mhm.
brought you to the temple. And I'm figure
Exactly.
you for 7 years. You said right. So you found that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the same temple, or you the whole
I
time was there in
started.
California.
I started in California, and I was doing well, but I felt a little isolated because all the devotees were a lot older than me,
Mm-hmm.
and there was like some dysfunction going on too. So I felt a little jarred by that. And then I met devotees from Florida. Like they came through on a bus tour,
Hmm.
and they did kirtan like I'd never seen before. Like it always been just kind of like banging cymbals and kind of chaotic combination of different instruments, but like they were very tasteful in how they did it. I was really impressed. And they're all really young. I was like, wow, it'd be really nice to make some friends, have some more peers. And I moved to Florida, and that's around the time I met you.
Oh, that's when you're going to like the Bhagavatam classes or classes with Prabhu Prabhu,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, during those years.
Oh yeah, it's been a few years. Time flies, huh? Time
Yeah,
flies. That's
it
awesome,
really
dude.
does.
Uh, okay, with all those experience, so now then that's it. You kind of had your experience. Now you moved into because you didn't hold a job or anything like that during that whole time, right?
Yeah, I worked at a shelter for troubled teenagers. I volunteered at a suicide hotline.
Oh, I see. While living in the temple and doing being a
Yeah,
brahmachari, basically.
yeah. I did the suicide hotline while I was living in the temple, and then I was living in an apartment on my own while working at the shelter.
How was that experience?
Which one?
The suicide hotline.
The training was amazing. It was like a role playing experience. So they would kind of give you a scenario of someone who might be calling, and you try to put yourself in their shoes and talk as if you were that person to the other person who's training as like a responder.
Hmm.
So like I put myself in the shoes of people who are like veterans, people who are raped, people who are like addicted to drugs or
Wow.
lost children, all sorts of scenarios that would make
Hmm.
someone want to end their life. And it just gives you so much empathy when you're trying to put yourself in their shoes and speak from it. It really it takes you beyond the theoretical to like really making the emotional connection. But once I got on in the actual like crisis room, it was not what I expected
Hmm.
because the first thing is it's not like one phone and you're like talking to one person and really connecting like we're doing. You got 8 phones.
Oh wow.
And it just feels so wrong to be talking to someone on a suicide hotline and be like, "Hey, can you hold for a minute? I got to go talk to someone else."
And
you
you're
know?
not. It's kind of a critical situation, and you're certainly not giving them your attention, right? Or the whole of your
Yeah,
attention.
I felt really bad about that. And the other thing was that people weren't really in crisis when they're calling. They were like people calling every day just because it's like what they do.
It becomes a go-to kind of thing. They become, yeah. I heard that before.
Yeah,
That it's just like they kind of make friends and they call just to talk sometimes,
right.
or they make quote unquote friends, right? It's just a line for them that they know they can call and someone will be there to listen to them, right?
Yeah. I kinda had my hands tied a bit where you can only repeat back what they say to you.
Hmm.
So through that experience, I got a sense of me wanting to help people, especially through talking with them, but wanting to have more freedom and one-on-one connection.
So as I was about to ask, that kind of inspired you to go into what you're doing today, which is life coaching.
Yeah. I mean, that all started with working on myself, and it's still that way because I'm like my first client,
That's good.
you know.
We're all our first clients, right? We have to make the
Yeah,
decision to improve ourselves. Yeah,
yeah, everyone's a life coach in that way.
exactly. That's awesome, dude. And now, okay, so we went through that experience. When did you move into life coaching and actually start taking action and putting your content out there and try connecting with people in that capacity?
Well, I feel like I started with the crisis hotline. Then I took some training through Satvatov in Florida, went through some of their courses.
With David
And
Wolf.
yeah, with David Wolf. His son Abby's my really close friend.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through foundational, advanced, and the practices and principles for coach training. Then when I started on my own,
So
I
you're
was
certified.
focusing.
You're certified through Sattvatov.
I'm not. No, I didn't finish the program formally.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I felt like my inclination is a lot more towards experience
Mm-hmm.
than certification.
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt like experience and effectiveness are more important than
Mm.
credentials. Not that credentials aren't important, but so far in my life, I've been working the best with what I've got, you know. And sometimes I feel like just being stable is like a big achievement
Yeah.
for me.
It's all. I think everybody's kind of in the same path, right? Doing the best with what we got.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool, though. Throughout all this experience, if I were to ask you, I mean, you grew up, you know, not within, but you grew up. You know, very early in life, you had contact with this philosophy, with Krishna consciousness. Then you made a decision as a young man to, you know, that it was your decision that that would be part of your life, right? And then 7 years later, you're still around, you're still practicing, and I figure you're using all this knowledge to try to improve not only your life, as you said, but the life of other people as well. What would be the one thing you wish you knew or understood better about yourself, if there is anything? Or
That's a great question. Um, I would love to go back in time and tell myself what I'm going to say now, and it's just how important personal responsibility is.
mm,
Um, it's a hard sell because there's not as much pressing need for responsibility nowadays. Things are like easy
mm-hmm,
and provided. But for me, personal responsibility is the means to create a life that suits me, where I can be safe and stable and things can be meaningful to me. I spent a lot of time being overly dependent on other people,
mm,
and it created a lot of suffering for me. A lot of feelings or experiences of disappointment or betrayal.
I see.
And so, like earlier, you asked about, oh, or how were those 7 years? And it was kind of like a mixed answer.
Mm,
So that's been my realization is that it's easy to conflate the practice with the people, but you know, people are imperfect.
yeah.
I'm imperfect. Um, but it's like sometimes we can want people to be more than they actually are. Um, I think I've always had kind of a father void that I've been trying to fill,
Mm,
and then I want someone to be more than they actually are, and that leads me to like be too dependent emotionally or materially. But in the last few years, as I've just like really focused on getting myself together, depending on myself and being more of a giver, especially given the things that I really need, it's like, you know, I feel like more of a channel of those things, you know, like being a guide to others or being a well wisher to others. In the way that I would have wanted, I get it too.
yes. So
You know what I
personal.
mean?
No, I hear you 100%. And it's
Yeah.
funny to hear that, and I'm gonna tell you why I asked this question, though, because I especially to people that grew up in Krishna consciousness and made a decision to practice, kind of have awareness of this knowledge, right? And why do I say that? Because I think it's special. I think there's a lot of things going on nowadays. You see this movement with law of attraction and people talking about energy and these kind of things. And I think it's all great. You know, I have conversations with people in that school of thought, but I see that it's kind of like, okay, that is true though, but what is the whole truth? Because that is not the whole truth. And what is better than the truth? The whole truth, right? And I feel like, sorry, someone is blending here in the house. I don't know if you can hear that noise. If you can, I apologize. Anyways, the whole truth for me is Krishna consciousness present the whole truth in a very practical way. So the personal responsibility thing is something that hits me, because based on my understanding, when it comes to, to especially the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, talking about, the natural manifestations, energetic manifestations of Lord Krishna, right? Like the internal potency, the external potency, the marginal potency. And when one understands the nature of this material world and the nature of who we really are and the nature of the supreme source, or no, source energy, whatever you want to call it, the nature of God, right? The nature of Krishna. It gives you one of the tools to understand what is happening around a person, right? At least that was my experience, and it made me understand that I am the center of my own existence. I have no choice but to take responsibility for what's happening to me. And that, I feel like, even though some people are practicing, and I'm not saying devotees in general, devotees, are glorious, all glories to them. So I think people in general, even in different spiritual paths, that lack of personal responsibility is there, because it's easy for us to shift blame. Oh, if the economy
Yeah,
was better, if this was better. Go
it's
ahead.
something that I'm finding through my life coaching is I talk with a lot of devotees who they know the philosophy and the practices and everything, but as far as unique identity and purpose, they feel very lost.
Hmm.
So spirituality can be an escape or a convenience. Um, a lot of times, people who are attracted to spirituality, especially in a really renounced and very committed kind of group or association, it's because their experience in the mature world is so bad.
Yes.
Um, but like, just because my experience in the mature world was bad, it doesn't make me secure in my spirituality. So there comes a moment where it's like, okay, I've learned everything. I've been practicing for a while, but there's still like something unresolved in my heart, and I need to find my place in the world. But people really get stuck there because all they know is the bad experiences in the past. They haven't figured out, like what you're talking about, how to integrate it into a healthy, uh, integrate their spirituality into a healthy life in the world.
Hmm.
I find a lot of people getting into a place of nostalgia where it's
Living in
like
the
they're monks,
past.
but yeah, they start listening to music from when they were a teenager or playing video games they used to play. And it's like the mind's trying to get a place in the world, but it doesn't know how to go forward. It only knows how to go back.
Yeah. Hmm. That's interesting, though. What do you think are the steps one needs to take to? I think it goes back to what you're saying, kind of first having personal
Yeah.
responsibility and starting
Yeah.
moving from that place.
Yeah, absolutely. What's helped me is gaining experience and following my heart. I've I had a sense of wanting to help people, and I've tried different things from suicide hotline to teenager shelter, Alzheimer's care, and each one's kind of a refining experience where I can say like, okay, this is what I like about it, and this is what I don't like about it, and
Mm-hmm.
then I say, okay, how can I increase my skills and my capacity that I can do a service that's going to be even more suited to my nature.
Hmm. That's nice. Yeah, there's definitely a way to go. Um, wow, this is. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about so many things when I talk, because I can literally talk about these things for hours, because it's fascinating to me, and you see in outside, when you're talking to people, there is literally a huge disconnect where you see people living like two lives. It's, as we're mentioned, like, it's hard to integration and see it as one. Why?
Mm.
Because it's all a matter of a mental attitude. It's not what you are doing, it's what is your approach, your mental attitude when engaging in whatever you're engaging with. That's why
Yeah.
I'm so soothed by, I don't know if that's the word, but I'm so like at ease with this
Mm.
philosophy and the knowledge it provides for me to engage as a husband, as a father, as anyone, because I try to come from that platform, that okay, who am I? Who am I? Okay, I'm spirit soul, right? I'm energy. I'm source energy. All right. What is the nature of this world? The nature of this world, it's given. It's given. Given based on what? Whatever you have your attention on. whatever you have your attention on, that Shakti will create the path of least resistance for you to move in that direction, right? I know I'm using some words that maybe are not said or spoken in a Bhagavatam class or in a Bhagavad Gita class, right? But these are conversations that I have with people that have a little bit more knowledge on this philosophy, and I ask, is this conclusion correct? It's like, yes, this conclusion. One of them, Prangovinda Prabhu, try to text him and ask a few things. It's like, it's an important understanding to have, because that is the nature. Maya is bounding, right? I asked him, is it correct? Just recently, I think last week, I said, is it correctly for a neophyte devotee, as that person is going through life, is it proper for that neophyte devotee to look at the world, to look at everything that is happening around him or her, and see the Yoga Maya feature of Maya Devi acting in his or her life, so he or she can more easily go through it without pushing against it? Does that make sense, what I asked? Did you understand?
I actually tend to really separate philosophy and personal experience, simply for the reason that I feel like sometimes we can remain a step away from our actual feelings by philosophizing them, or it can be difficult to understand exactly what experience you're describing when it's philosophized. So, like, I can get really intellectual, but I tend to kind of set that part of myself aside and connect on more of a personal, emotional level with people. I find that a lot more helpful.
And when you say that, you mean like trying to understand what they are and why they feel the way they feel?
Yeah, like, suppose like I'm giving a Srimad Bhagavatam class and someone raises their hand afterwards and they say, like, well, how can we balance our material and spiritual life in the material world? I'd say, hey, let's talk after class and you can tell me about your experience with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can know I'm actually talking to the person and not just giving a generic answer.
I gotcha. And give me an example of someone that is someone is experiencing I'm having trouble with my marriage.
Having trouble with marriage. Oh, well, say you feel afraid of the relationship breaking up.
Which I'm not, by the way. I'm not. My marriage is great. I love my wife. I'm just giving an example.
Maybe instead of saying you, like, say someone
yes.
is feeling like, oh man, like I feel like our relationship has changed. Like everything used to be good, now something's different. Is it me? Is it her? And then feeling that insecurity, they go to her and say like, do you love me? And like wanting her to fill that void, and it can create this kind of like experience where you're just constantly like pulling reassurance from the other person. It like really puts a strain on the relationship. But yeah, like instead you can just be like, okay, I've got this insecurity, this fear. You never know what's going to happen. So, all right, I'm willing to be a little uncomfortable with this feeling, take responsibility for it myself, and then just show up in the relationship as like a man.
Exactly. And why I agree with that 100%, though, 100%. And I think that is a very that the philosophy addresses it. And how would I say? Let me put a practical thing. I was talking to someone about just that, and that's why I asked this. I was talking to someone about this, right? Oh, I'm having trouble, and this is someone that knows the philosophy, practices, is around here, right? Having trouble with my marriage, this and that is not working out. And the person was in that conversation eager to jump into action. What should I do? What should I do? But not from his perspective, but from her perspective. Does that make sense? Like, oh, because he didn't need to change, she needed to change, right?
Oh.
And I mean, he didn't say that out loud, but could hear the things that he's saying. I was like, what do you want? What do you want? Oh, I want to go back. I want to love her. I was like, so love her. Just love her. You show up. You take a responsibility. It's like, I am gonna make this happen. And philosophically, we can. I have even written the verses. Like this can be proven philosophically that when you make a decision, you make a focus, and then why do we make that decision? We can do even in someone that is not a Krishna Bhakta, is not a devotee, is not a spiritual person. That that approach will work in the same way. Why? Because material nature will reciprocate. If you show up focusing on loving, giving love, stepping up, as you said, as a man, and you keep focusing not on the lack of what you perceive in the relationship, but you focus on what you want in the relationship, regardless of being there or not. Because most people look, it's not there, so they let the not being there dictate their attention. But we're not animals, right? We're human beings. If I can let my desire dictate the attention, the situation is bound to change. Material nature is like, oh, you think this is good? Here is more. This is good, here is more. Now, Krishna consciousness transcends that, because we do the same thing, but I don't do it for my pleasure or for her pleasure. I do for a pleasure, for Krishna's pleasure. If you go even deeper, I do it for Guru's pleasure.
Yeah, I'm reminded of this verse. Bhayam ditya biniveshata syat ishadapitasya vaparyo smriti tanmaya to buddha abhajitam bhaktaikayesham gurudevatatma. And it says that we become fearful when we absorb our minds in dualities that are beyond our control.
Yes.
The solution to this is to return our consciousness to our souls and to the Supreme, and absorb ourselves in that way.
Exactly.
And that's actually the ultimate kind of security, because it's eternal.
Exactly. And for me, it's very practical. When I hear that, what does that mean? Going to realize, who am I? Who am I really? I'm spirit soul, right? Who is the Supreme? Oh, it's God, loving, all giving. Where am I? I'm in here, in His energy, in His nature, right? I'm here in one of His energies.
Yeah.
Now, what can I do from that perspective? From that perspective, I can focus on what I want. And people are like, oh, you should not. Someone told me that, oh, you should not, focus in this way because Krishna is not there for that. No, Krishna is there for everything. There's nothing can happen. God is the source of all emanations. And as a loving Father, if you're sincere in your wanting and you present it before Him, He will make arrangements so you can get what you want, and you can also come to Him.
Yeah, there's a lot of freedom within the proper orientation of our relationship with God and the world.
Yes.
And there's also time to go through different phases according to our needs and our nature, and we can come closer to Him in time.
Yes. It's nice that you're approaching this way, though. Because a lot of coaching, and I worked in sales my whole life. I was a sales trainer for the past 3 years for a publishing company here in Gainesville. I worked as a project manager. So I've been, the Tony Robbins seminars, the Grant Cardones, and this, and a lot of the coaching is action oriented. People want to take action. It's action oriented, and you have to
massive action.
Say it again.
So don't they call it massive action?
Massive action. You got to take massive action. Exactly, right? This is a Tony Robbins thing. You got to take massive action, and I always tell people, yes, of course, I understand what they're coming from, but that not should the basis. Why? Because you know that material nature will force you to act. Action will be taken. It will force you to act according to your nature. The point is, what do you want? What is inspiring that action? The need to control or the need to serve?
The action?
Exactly.
Yeah, is it a quality of needing to control or serve?
Exactly. Yeah. And if he's in the mood of service, and then knowing the nature of God, knowing the nature of Bhagavan, you kind of surrender. Yeah. And when you feel inspired to act, you will be in a loving mood, as we talked about. Yeah. If it's a husband and wife kind of thing, and you're having a disagreement, like the disagreement becomes secondary. Because one understands that it's like, yes, this is just taking place. It is a happening. It's like the sun coming up in the morning. I don't get all all startled, all fired up because the sun is coming up in the morning. It's a happening. It's just,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It happened.
Yeah.
Why is it happening? I don't know why it's happening. It's my karma. It's happening. Now I have a choice from where I stand to move against it or in the direction of what I want. Most
Yeah.
people
It
move
sounds like
against
you're
it.
talking about like not being in a reactive kind of
Yes.
framework where you just like wake up and your day is as good as whatever happens to you.
Yes.
I think that's a lot of us. But instead we have the opportunity to get into more of a proactive and creative mindset.
Yes. Powered by desire. That's another realization
Yeah,
I had.
knowing what you want.
Yes, very important.
That's rare.
I cultivate that with my daughter so much. So like know what is wanted. Know your desires. Know ultimately everything we're pleasure seekers by nature, right? I'm sure you heard that several times. Cannot help but want pleasure. Everything we do for one reason and one reason only. We think we'll feel better, we'll be happier in the having of it, in the feeling of it, or whatever of it. So we cannot help. So the important thing is, okay, what do I want? What is my desire? And then start digging and digging and digging and digging. And for me, Krishna consciousness accommodates everything. If one wants to be, I want a happy family, I want a wife, I want kids, bus, no problem. Now you think, why? Why do I want? A person that is not Krishna consciousness would be because it's life. I want to enjoy. I want to love my wife. I want her to love me. Okay, great. A person that is Krishna consciousness, is God consciousness, will understand. Yes, all those things are there, but I wanna do what? I wanna serve. I wanna create an environment, an opportunity to enhance this mood of service towards Guru,
Yeah, I
towards
really like
Krishna.
that because when you're in that mindset, there's so much more opportunity than when you're trying to control.
Yes,
I mean, the whole world is just nowadays it's like a whole argument of who should be in control, and
it's amazing,
there's so
isn't it?
much there's so much envy and propaganda.
Facebook
You know,
experts, you know?
yeah,
You should be doing this, you should be doing that. Why are you doing
yeah,
this? You sheeple and this and that. And you hear that sometimes from devotees, which is unfortunate. I'm like, we're not the controllers. You have I was listening and I was reading a quote from Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj, and he was saying, for all my disciples, sannyas, grihastas, the women, everybody, I'm telling you, try to understand you are not the doer. And it's like, yes, like this is such a simple thing, but under illusion, under the false ego or influence of the false ego, right, we think we're the doers. But I always have this conversation with my father-in-law. He and I say, like, this is something that has to be thoroughly understood. I cannot do anything. The idea that I can do something is illusion. But it's hard because people are like, what do you mean, dude? You're doing stuff all the time. You learned English. You've decided to come to the United States. You met your wife. You mustered up the courage to go talk to her, introduce yourself. Yes, and that is I'm being carried out by material nature according to the momentum I came into this material energy. And
yeah,
while that is happening, I have a choice: move towards what is wanted or move towards what is unwanted. Or push against it or go with the flow. Like, I know it's very mystical and maybe I'm being too philosophical for people, but I came to understand that it's like, okay, I have to wrap my head around the idea that I am not the doer. I can't do
mm,
anything. I can only desire. Desire is what I can hold and take ownership. It is mine. And based on that desire, Krishna through his energies will make the arrangement where action will have to take place. And in that
mm,
moment I will have a choice. So, and
mm.
that's at least that how I see the philosophy, and that's how it's been very like fulfilling to me. So it's nice
Yeah.
to hear the things you're saying, because I think you have very much kind of the same approach.
I have some realization about that. Us not being the doer.
Please share.
Uh, yeah, sometimes I talk with people about the experience of self sabotage, where it's like you're trying to do one thing, but you end up doing something else.
Yeah.
And so I do journaling with them, like guided journaling, and I'll say like, okay, what's the conflict here? Like, okay, how do I use my time well? How do I discipline myself to exercise instead of sleeping in? And I'll say, okay, well, what are the different sides of you that are fighting over this? Like, is there a lazy side of you and like a disciplined side of you? Like, yeah, okay, give them a name. So they give them a name,
Mm-hmm.
whatever those sides of their personality are at conflict, and I say, okay, what do they have to say? And they'll kind of express like, what's the disciplinarian voice, those thoughts that like run through their head when they're in that mode compared to the lazy mode, different thoughts. And then I ask, who does this remind you of?
Mm.
And immediately they'll be like, oh, that's just like my father. My father would speak to me exactly like that.
Mm.
So it's like the scripts that go through our head are just things that we've inherited through association in the material world.
Yes.
And we think that we're thinking, but we're actually just switching between different modes, and accordingly we act in a certain way. But it's like, for the most part, we're totally unconscious about it. We're just like on autopilot.
Yep.
So there is room for creativity and self-expression and doership, but it it grows to the degree that we're aware of what we want, how we're showing up in the world, and how we're interacting with different energies.
Yes. Yes. That's a good way to put it. I like it because it's
Yeah.
true. And I do think that, I think there's several techniques and ways that people can approach it. That is certainly a good one, like journaling and, writing things down, commit to paper, right? That's what I tell my daughters, like commit to paper, write it down, right? Your ideas, the way you're feeling it, commit to paper. Uh, I was going to say but I don't want to say but I have to say but. I feel that a lot of times that 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 is the path that some people have to take. I understand that, and I think especially your job as a coach, like, is to facilitate, right? Because they have to be the one to walk. They have to be the one to have their realizations. I think a coach is there to facilitate, right? To help them engage, to help them with engaging. I'm not here to tell you what to do, right?
Right.
But I think a great thing that coaches or anyone that is in a position of a mentorship, right? For example, myself as a father, right? And when I say, "Oh, you're a coach," it's like, yeah, I coach two living beings. One is 9 and one is 12, right? Let them understand that yes, we can go through all. It's easier with children because they don't carry baggage. You're dealing with adults. I figure, right? You're dealing with adults,
20s
so
to 30s, yeah.
exactly. So not even young adults, right? Not kind of like adults, mature adults, 30s, 40s, right? So they might come with some baggage, so where that kind of work is more relevant and more important. But I think as an important thing as you're doing the work, an important thing to realize and to pay attention to is to make sure that whatever work, whatever thought you're putting, practice you're putting into place, be done as a make sure it has as a foundation the realization of who you really are, and from that perspective move towards what you want. Because a lot of people, and I have this personal experience dealing with people that were close to me. They're close to me, not as much as physically now, but kind of we spent years and years together.
Closed or closed?
Close to me, proximity.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
thank you. They were close to me, right, proximity wise, and you see that there's this tendency to, because that becomes a project in itself. They want to. I always tell people like, oh, I need to get to the bottom of it, and I tell them, listen, there's no bottom though. It's a bottomless pit.
I really like that.
There's no bottom. We can spend so much time here and try to understand why
Trying
this
to
happened
figure
to
it
you,
out.
try to figure it out, which I understand it can be beneficial to some people. And you will find, because you believe, not you, right, but the person that I'm talking to, because I'm talking with, because one believes that, you will find evidence of people that took that path and found whatever results they found. I understand that because material nature is constantly giving us evidence of what we choose to believe. I completely understand that. But I think
This is great, Prabhu.
it's an important thing to understand that, like, it is a bottomless pit. There is an easier path to
You
what you
remind me of
want.
the verse in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita where it says that the material world's just like a banyan tree that's got branches going up and down, and they're just so complicated and going so many directions that you don't know where you're at. And there's no
Yes.
like beginning or end to it. So you just got to
Yes.
get out an axe and just start chopping at it with just some detachment.
Exactly. It's like you have to get to the core. A core of what? Of who you really are.
Who you are, yeah,
Who
that's the
you are.
foundation.
The problem
Yeah,
is not take the vaccination, don't take the or take the vaccine, don't take the vaccine, whatever. Let people do what they feel is best for them. I'm not here to dictate, right? I know I threw that example out of nowhere, but you know how people online are getting into these things, right? Take the jab, don't take the jab. It's like it's not my job to tell you what you should or should not do. My point is, know who you really are and what the real problem is, because the real problem is material life, period. But a lot of
yeah.
people, you
100%
cannot.
of people, 100% of people who take the vaccine will die eventually.
Exactly. And then you have to come back and experience, like, so material. The problem is material life, period. But of course, you're not going to tell people, oh, no, don't do this, don't do that because you're not this body. It's like, no, no, no. I'm here right now. So what I mean is, like, realize who you really are, and based on that realization, what is it that is yours, that you can take ownership of? And that is
Mm-hmm.
desire. So okay, let's cultivate that. What is your desire? What do you want? Because anything is possible from where you stand. You cannot get there from there. You can only get there, whatever there is, from where
From
you
here.
stand.
Yeah, it's interesting how little of our desires are even our own. Like Krishna says, Sangat Sanjayate Kama. Our desires are often just a product of our environment or
Yes,
association.
yes. But that comes from what? Most, and correct me if I'm wrong, though. I just listen to these things and I appreciate you sharing the verses with me, but I think that these desires, most of these desires that are coming from association and from our environment, is coming from misidentification. Is because I
Yeah,
identify with my situation, I identify
right.
with my body, I identify with the
Yeah.
things that happen to me.
Yeah, we can have such a small scope, small vision in how we desire, like you grow up in a certain circumstances and you never even imagine what's possible beyond it.
Exactly. So one, that's why the greatest, like, welfare work one can do is truly, like, preach Krishna consciousness. Like, and I don't want to sound like a fanatic or anything like that. I try to be very practical, but I think that Krishna consciousness, in a way, to have a discussion in a way that we are having here right now, to get to the bottom of it, in a way, like, to get to the foundation of it, right?
Mm.
Because people are like, oh, I need to get to the bottom of this problem, bottom of that problem. See, there's no bottom. The more attention you give to it, the more momentum it
Grows.
will
Yeah.
generate.
Yeah.
So instead of giving attention to it, whatever it may is, right? The lack of love in a relationship, I'm not in the shape that I want to be, I don't have the job that I think I should have. Instead of focusing in that way, you can focus on what is wanted from where you stand, which is, I want a loving relationship.
Yeah.
I want a job that I know I'm qualified for, and I know that from where I stand, I can start, carving that path.
Yeah.
I want, be in the best shape of my life, and there's a few things that I can do, like, I can start taking the steps I need to take to move in that direction. I always say, like, most people, if I ask someone, hey, what do you want? Their answer is, I don't want this. It's like, no, that's
Hmm.
not the question. I didn't ask you what you don't want. I asked you, what do you want? And they don't have clarity because they have this practiced thought of pushing against what they don't want, because usually what they don't want is what is present in their life. Does that make sense?
Oh, I think I'm gonna steal this "there is no bottom" thing from you. And
Please do. Please do. It's not even
yeah,
mine. I think I heard from someone. I can't take credit. It's from one of the courses or some that I participated in, and it's true. There's no,
mm,
as unless one addresses the what is it called, like, the foundation, right? If you try to address the conditions and what the conditions led you to, right? My past, what happened to me here, what happened, oh, I need to get to the bottom of it. Truly, there's no bottom.
There's no bottom.
And we'll find people that found some closure by going that path, but it's certainly the path of most resistance, because and this is based on philosophy. Why? Because you're giving it your attention from a perspective of not wanted, right? You're looking at something that is clearly not wanted. If you're talking about someone that hurt you in a relationship or anything that may be, if you need to get to the bottom of why that happened, you are looking at something that is clearly not what you want. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
So material nature, because it has your attention, material nature will keep sending more evidence of it. More evidence of it. Yeah. While in the other way, the other side of that coin is also true. If you flip that coin and focusing, I'm going to use this experience as a springboard to what I want, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk of what I want. If it's a relationship where my heart was broken, I'm going to talk about what is the other side of that.
It's really wonderful to just tell someone what you want.
Right? And then it takes courage, Damodar. Don't you think so?
Yeah.
It takes courage. A lot of people are ashamed.
Don't know what they're gonna
they
say.
Don't have the courage to speak of
right.
what, they don't have the courage to say what they want.
Yeah, there's like the fear of like, say you're in a relationship, you're just meeting someone, and you think like, well, if I just directly say what I want, maybe they will say no, and then I'll be single, and then I'll be lonely, and I'll be sad.
The mind goes crazy. And that's why I'm saying that there is when the mind needs to, because the mind wants to protect you, right? The function of the mind to satisfy.
Mind is to protect you.
Exactly. So if one understands that this is not me, this is the mind. I need to focus on what I want.
Protect your ego.
Yes. Which is a great relationship, is to meet someone that is that I can bring value to my life and I can bring value to that life's person. Like I like someone said, gave an example I thought was perfect. It was such a good example. It truly is like this. As we live in this material world, and I want your take on this. As we live in this material world, when we speak, I don't know if you heard this. I'm gonna what's the word? Preface. Say something before I say my point.
Disclaimer.
Just not even a disclaimer. I need to make a point before I make another point. But I don't know if you heard that I think there's a Bengali proverb that says it's okay to think about something, but don't say it. In the same way that it's okay to have birds flying above your head, but you cannot let them make a nest on your head, on top of your head. Does that make sense? Why? And I related to that so much because of the second part of what I'm going to share now. Because in this world, as we are saying things, because once we say it, there's already momentum in the mind. There's already momentum in the mental plane, right? Once you speak. So as you speak, imagine you're spewing a green mist in front of you, right? Like a octopus, right? They spill that thing in the water, right? That blue
green
ink.
Sounds kind of toxic and nasty.
The ink, right? Imagine you're speaking, and let's another color than blue or pink. I don't know, but you're spewing as you're talking. Whatever you're talking, doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, or wanted or unwanted. It doesn't matter. Whatever you're talking, as you're talking and walking, you're walking into it. You're spewing that blue ink and walking into it. Now the question is, what do you want to walk into?
Oh man.
Isn't it?
I like the way you put things.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's so profound though. That's why I say like we have to, and that's what I believe that vacho vegam, isn't it? Control the tongue.
Challenging brings a lot of awareness.
Yes, we have to control the tongue. That's what it means.
You're saying these things. I'm like looking at myself, like, oh man, am I running from what I don't want? Am I like speaking a reality that I don't want to live in?
But tell me what you think though. Does you think that it is kind of a proper approach? Because it makes so much sense to me. That's why I was curious about talking to someone like you, because that's what you do, you know?
It reminds me of that famous experiment where they have people like throwing a basketball and then like a monkey guy in a gorilla suit walks through and they ask people, they tell people to look for how many times the ball's passed. And then after it's over, they say, oh, did you see the gorilla?
They're like, what?
And they're like, no. Huh?
What are you
And
talking
they show it
about?
again. And they see it. So we actually see what we're looking for. And I think this is a very similar idea in that our our words are verbalized thoughts. So something I found really useful in communication is, especially in an intimate relationship, is that there's a difference between acknowledging your thoughts and sharing the fact that you have them, and meaning them and buying into them.
Mm.
And it can be really healthy to just acknowledge, like, hey, when you say that, I'm having this thought.
Yes.
And just by that mindfulness of being aware of what's going on in our heads,
Yes, it's
um,
important.
empowers us to be more intentional.
It's really simple though. Like it is a matter of choice. And one also might say that once you truly realize it, choice is kind of
Yeah.
out of the question because I have no choice but to focus on what I want and speak of what I want. Because one realized that choice is actually an illusion because I will be forced to act. I'm forced to do whatever I'm doing. Like I use another example. Recently, my family and I we went to
I'd say choice is limited.
say it again.
I'd say that choice is limited, especially the more that we're in a dark or reactive mode.
Yes, yeah. There's several examples. Like one might say, like I heard someone saying, like choice is limited. Yes, I agree with that 100%. Yes, no, choice is limited. But you also you've seen sometimes sports or people like in the highest level of sports and something they say like they decided that choice wasn't an option. Like I just for me to succeed, I decided like there's no choice here. It's not a choice of
Commitment.
go party with my friends or training today. They didn't for them it didn't even compute. It's like
Yeah.
there's no choice to be made. In that sense, I think that the more momentum you have moving towards what you want, choice becomes a secondary thing because there's
Hmm.
so much momentum with you focused and moving towards what you want that when if
Yeah.
someone asks like what are you going to do, Damodar, are you going to love on your wife, on your girlfriend, give her attention, and or you're going to pay attention to these friends that don't really care about you and don't care about her, like if
Yeah.
the
The
momentum
big
is strong
decisions.
here, that is a silly question. It's like, dude, there's no
Yeah.
choice to be made here.
Yeah. The big decisions are what all the micro decisions fall under.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Damodar, we can talk about it's 7:16. I wanna hold you. I'm telling you, I can have these conversations all day because it's like they're kind of like
Oh, it's
jewels,
been enlightening.
diamonds, like just dripping
Yeah.
through the path as we
But
speak.
these are
Because
important things, and they're universal. They're good
true,
reminders for you and me and everyone listening.
very true, very true. We have to realize who we really are, and from
Hmm.
that platform, move one pointed. Right, that's something that I heard in Krishna consciousness. Have a one pointed devotion, right, towards Krishna. Yes, that is true, but it's important also in the path. If someone cannot connect on that level, you can take that lesson and have one pointed focus towards what you want. Because guess what, God wants you to have what you want.
Yeah.
There's no assertion.
Sometimes people get stuck about wanting to want something,
Mm,
or I should want.
yes.
And there can be definitely a fear around that for devotees. And it comes back to the point you made that you can't get there from there. You have to get there from where you're actually at.
Yes. And that's why I
So,
take that's what I take from when I hear like sincerity, be sincere, right?
mm,
Because I think a lot about that. What does it mean to be sincere though? Like in this path, right? It really, for me, in a way, and I'm not categorizing as the only answer, right? The absolute truth here, but in a way, it means like, yeah, be sincere. What do you want? What do you want, right? We know that the goal is Vrindavan. The goal is to serve, Radha Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, like in the utmost abode of the Supreme Absolute Truth, especially in this line, right? In this Gaudiya Vaishnava line. I understand that. But you cannot get there from there. You can only get there from where you are. So, what do you want from where you are? And for me, it's like, yeah, okay, I want my kids to be happy. I want my wife to be happy. Okay, now what kind of action are you taking that will bring about that happiness and ultimately leads to Krishna consciousness,
yeah. Yeah, there's a progression.
right? If one is doing it under guidance and with a
Under guidance.
sincere
Yeah.
mood of surrender, ultimately that they will not be spoiled, because whatever comes in between is leading you there.
Yeah, I noticed devotees struggle a lot with permission.
Mm.
Like even if they directly hear like, yeah, you can do that. Like you can have your career in the world, you can have a family, you can have hobbies. There's a kind of insecurity about it all, just that fear of like, well, if I step away from just direct Krishna consciousness, then I'm going to be lost. But I would actually say it's kind of the opposite here is like you do have to actually find your true desires, not what you want to want, but what you actually want.
Yes.
Actually, the more you resist your desires, the more that they seem dark,
Yes.
the more that they seem extreme, because your mind exaggerates things. But you can actually take your material desires and think like, what do I actually want from that? Like, for example, I was talking with someone, and they were like, I had sex with my girlfriend, and I was really wanting to wait until we were married, but I I felt like it would be a way we could be closer.
Mm.
So it's like, well, what you actually want is to be closer with her, and you thought the way to do that was sex, but you're finding that actually that didn't bring you together emotionally.
Exactly.
So you can kind of unpack things
Exactly.
and
Where
be
you can,
willing to
when you
face
unpack, you can
yourself.
get what you want. You actually, when
You
you
can get
figure
what
it
you
out, then you
want.
can get what you want, because you're more clear of what it is. As you said, was
You're
not
more
sex,
clear about what
was to
you
be
want.
close to her,
Right.
which you thought was sex. I love the way you put that. That's perfect. It's true. You see that
Yeah.
a lot, and that's why all these confusions come from, or people with, they come up with this push and
Oh yeah.
pull, do not do, be, do not be, or, and all these things where there's no need for all that. Like, God is all like merciful, like it's all,
Yeah.
everything, all encompassing, and he's all, this material world itself is Krishna's mercy, as horrible as it is. Someone asked Srila
Yeah.
Prabhupada, I think it was, what's his name? I don't remember the sannyas, but he's a sannyas, Satchidananda Swami. He asked Srila Prabhupada, why Krishna created this world? Why would he want something like this? So much misery, so much disturbance. And Srila Prabhupada, he said, right, that Srila Prabhupada kind of opened his eyes big and said, Krishna didn't want, you wanted.
Yeah.
You wanted. And is wanted based
Yeah.
on what? In the things you're giving your attention to. We're giving our attention to misery, to people getting sick and trying to control. Don't do this, don't do that. Attention is the name of the game. We have to choose, what am I giving my attention to? Am I giving my attention to what is wanted, or am I pushing against what is not wanted? Most people are pushing against what is not wanted. And that is bringing more of what is not wanted, because that is the nature of this world. I know it's a heavy thing. A lot of people don't accept that. And and that's why I appreciate you joining me on the podcast, so I can have these conversations, because I love having these conversations, and I think it can be clarifying to a lot of people, for them to understand that the push and pull, we are introducing resistance. We are the ones introducing the resistance to everything that we want.
Yeah, the
Now,
world's just kind of like waves of our past actions,
yes. And
like an
one might
echo.
say, like, oh, no, but this person is doing that to me. Yes, I understand all that, though, but you have to understand that comes with momentum. All you have
Yeah,
is what you have right now. Right now,
you're
where
playing
you
you're
stand.
playing the counterpart of what
Yes.
that person's doing to you.
Then you have to, focus on desire. There's a Bhaktivinoda Thakur poem, right, that talks about don't focus on the past, on the past, the future. Don't think about the future. I mean, he puts in a poetic way, right, in old
Yeah,
English. But
yeah,
he
yeah.
says
But
that
focus on
the present. That's all we
the present.
have. And I say, see, it's all here. These Vaishnavacharyas are talking about it. They're talking about it. And then some of those, Rasik Vaishnavas, they're really in the mood of service toward Radha Krishna. They go even deeper, right? They go even deeper. And I think sometimes a lot of people are diving in without really being prepared to take that dive. You know what I'm saying? And then there's a little shock there, because it's like, okay, yeah, this is all there, but let's look at everything that they have prepared. They have paved the way for
Yeah,
that to come.
you got to know how that environment works before you try to take your place there.
Exactly. That's awesome, Damodar. It's 7:24. I'm gonna have to cut this conversation short. We've been talking for a while. Damo, thank you so much.
We have?
We've been
I thought it
talking.
was like 5
We've
minutes.
been. I know that's what it feels like. Listen, I'm gonna be doing these episodes. I want the podcast to be an ongoing thing. The doors are always open for you if you'd like to,
Sounds good.
open invitation. If you just wanna, if you feel
Well,
like,
thank you.
okay, you wanna have a conversation, just email me and
I feel
we'll
like
do
I made
another
a
one.
friend. I feel like I made a friend, and this podcast is the perfect excuse.
Absolutely, absolutely. We knew each other already, and I appreciate you
Yeah,
taking your time to get to know me a
yeah,
little
yeah.
more and give me the opportunity to get to know
Yeah,
you a
I got
little
to
more.
hear your realizations. It was really enriching.
That's awesome, man. Thank you very much, Damodar.
Yeah,
Again, guys, CoachDamodar.com. Check out his content. Check out his website. Here we go. It's up on the screen.
I
CoachDamodar.com.
actually wrote down notes of things you said on here, so I didn't hold this one up.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah,
And that's what we want to associate with, right? We want to associate with people that are actually in the path trying to better themselves. And hopefully we can all ride
that's where it starts.
that wave together, right? Because we're all
Amen.
trying to better ourselves. Damo, thank you very much. I'll keep in contact with you, my
Thank you.
friend. All right, Hare Krishna.
Awesome. Hare Krishna.
That's it. CoachDamodar.com. I love having these conversations. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope I wasn't getting too philosophical, too deep here with the things I say. But it's important to realize who we really are, the nature of who we really are, the nature of this material world, and the nature of God, the nature of the Supreme Source, right? And He's all given. He's all given, all loving. All right? Thank you very much. Don't forget to check the website, 108daysofchanting.com or 108doc.com. And I'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Hare Krishna.